Chapter 11, The Men of My Life. I wanted a brother like the brothers I saw on television, one who loved his sister and would always be there for her. I guess our age gap was the biggest obstacle. When I was born, he was already around 13 years old. I was just another baby in the home. I saw pictures of him growing up. He was cute, reminded me of the beaver on the old television show. He played baseball, and he and my sisters had ponies. They had many stories growing up together. A couple of times I recall Roger being a brother. Once when I was hit by a car at the bus stop. It happened down the street from my home. The teenagers in the car had gone around the bus when it was letting us off. When I came around the bus, I heard a honk and I looked up at the bus driver, but it was too late. I had stepped out just enough to get hit by the car. I remember I was on the ground and I looked up and saw my spelling book. I was upset because I did not want it tore up. Funny how we think when trauma happens. I was slung about 12 feet. I was taken to the hospital by a family member. My neighbor and friend had to run to my house from the bus stop to tell my parents what had happened. My dad and brother were the first to show up at the bus stop. I remember sitting and talking to my dad, my brother, and to the officer when my brother yelled something. My body was in shock, so I did not realize he was yelling at the young adults who had just flattened his sister. I felt proud of him for taking up for me. I did nothing wrong, but just knowing he was upset over this situation made me happy. He loved me. When we got to the hospital, I remember I was on the gurney in the emergency room and I saw my mother down the hallway. I was excited to see her and I had good news to report to her. My mom would always ask me if I had clean underwear on because she said you never know what could happen. She must have had a mother's intuition. As she saw me and started walking towards me, I yelled down the hallway, "Hey, Mom, I got clean underwear on." All of a sudden, the nurses and my mom started laughing. My mom was happy to see me alert and very happy I had on clean underwear that day. I was in the last couple of months of my fifth grade year when I was hit by that car. It messed up my perfect attendance record because I had to spend 2 days in bed due to a hematoma. I was so upset. However, I did get a nice write-up in the paper about the accident. It had been mentioned many times over the years in the local newspaper. My parents kept a scrapbook of my accomplishments and would show everyone and anyone. Roger and I were competitive. Each time we saw each other, we would try to stump the other person with the word to spell. He was pretty smart and it kept me on my toes. He would also come over as he and his family lived not too far from our home. We also loved pranking each other. One day, as it was my 13th birthday, I decided to have a small party. I had some friends over and my mom had gotten me a cake. They had all my candles on the cake and sang me happy birthday. To my surprise, my mom had put those candles on that relit. I blew them out and they all came back. I realized what it was because we had all played pranks on each other. I was blowing and laughing when Roger walked in. Now he was in on the candles and he knew they relit. He said that he could blow them out. I stepped to the side and he puffed his chest, took a deep, huge breath, and then he blew air and it looked like mist all over my cake. The candles went out and never lit back. I remember when loads came out for cigarettes. They were small, dynamite-type explosives that would fit at the end of a cigarette in cigars. Once the cigarette was lit, the load would ignite and explode. It would shred the end of the cigarette. We had a whole family full of cigarette and cigar smokers. I remember this one particular time when my Aunt Cat had my sister drive her to the store for gas. When my sister was out pumping the gas, my Aunt Cat decided it was time for a cigarette. Little did she know that we had loaded it earlier that day. Unbeknownst to my sister outside the vehicle, my aunt lit it up and it exploded. When my sister was done pumping the gas, she got back in the car and my aunt had a shredded cigarette hanging out of her mouth. My aunt had said she thought she was a goner. The look on her face and the shredded cigarette said it all. My sister and my aunt both started laughing. We got every smoking member of our family and we terrorized them for years with loads. My aunt says she was afraid to light one after the gas station incident. A few times I got my brother Roger in pranks that were hard to top. He was the top boss at a casino, and I was driving shuttles for an independent contractor. I had those magnetic signs for vehicles that we used for another casino in town where we were taking customers. This particular magnetic sign was my brother's casino's competition. One night, I had stuck the magnetic sign with a competing casino proudly displayed on the passenger side of his vehicle. The way he was parked, he could not see it. He drove to work that morning and parked in his big boss slot. It was not until he got off work later that day that he noticed he had the magnet on his truck. Another time I got him was when I switched his GPS to Spanish. The next morning, he had to be at a meeting out of town. He said he knew the direction he was going and was going to switch the GPS on when he got closer to the meeting. When he went to input the address, it was all Spanish. He immediately called me because he knew who had done it. As much as he stayed annoyed at me, he really never got mad at me for pranks. I have not spoken to him in years. When our dad passed away, he just stopped talking to me and a couple of other siblings. I've tried to reach out over the years, but he just ignores the request. I guess the bitterness he had towards me pushed him away from me. I do miss him. Roger and Tabitha are very similar, and their relationship is close. Tabitha is 6 years older than me, and the one I had to share the bedroom with. She and Roger are very materialistic. If you walk into Roger's home, he will tell you about his newest purchase, how much it cost him, and how much he saved. Tabitha just likes new things. She and her husband like the newest cars and clothes. I guess because they felt left out from getting nice things growing up, their need to buy is emotional. I was the only child that got a working dad. Unfortunately, my siblings got the strict no job dad. Mother always made sure I had quality products from clothes to furniture. I was not spoiled. As she said, I was loved. Our situation changed, and yes, I got nicer things. I used to give all my things away, though, to my sister Linda and her 3 boys. She was very poor and always struggling. If I got a television for Christmas, you best bet my nephews would be watching it at their home. To this day, I still will hand someone something that costs hundreds of dollars and say, here, use this and bring it back when done. Buying something is just a part of living, but it does not mean a thing if you don't value human life above all. I value human life, not material things. When Linda got pregnant in high school, I remember all the chatter in the home. This was post Roe versus Wade, and Texas was wide open into murdering babies. My sister chose to get married and have the baby, but I do not remember anything else ever being said. I guess at that point, I assumed my family was happy my nephew was born and he was healthy. It was not until I was 16 that I would hear the ugly word abortion. I had an older boyfriend. My parents were not happy, but still let me see him. It was not my first love or anything like that, but I believe it was the attention I received. I had decided to have sex and got pregnant. Now, even though I was a teenager, I had no idea what human life was growing in my belly. I had no idea what the heck I had done or the implications it would have on my life. Instead of explaining the situation to me, I was told it was going to be taken care of. My mother, my Aunt Kat, and my sister Sandra and Linda were all telling me this was the right thing. All the women I loved and admired were telling me to murder my baby, and I could not understand it. I blocked out most of that time. However, my niece Jane helped me piece it back together. She is my niece who's 3 years younger than me. We grew up like sisters. She recalled the whole conversation because she was there with me, and when she ended up pregnant at 17, her mom, my sister, tried to get her to abort her baby. It was John, her dad, who stopped it. Had my dad known, he would have stopped it. But like everything else in my life, we kept it a secret. It was many years later when my first husband, Lonnie, got mad at me and told my dad what I had done. My dad did not speak to me or my mom for a while. It hurt me. I had disappointed my dad. This was not the first time I had disappointed my dad. He was the one person I hated to upset. He would get quiet, and that was the worst. I remember this one time hanging around with my sisters. We were on the corner by our home. Across the street was an old building that had been used for mental health, and the lot was huge. I was sitting there with my neighbors and my sisters when a boy from school came riding up on his new bike. I did not care about him. He was a couple of grades older than me, and apparently my sisters did not care for him and his bike. My sister Linda could get me to do anything. She double dog dared me, and then the others jumped in and convinced me to pop the boy's tire. I recall my dad's face and how he was trying to talk to the boy's grandparents. I was told to go outside until Dad called me back into the house. I never got called back in for the punishment. He did not speak to me for 2 days, and that was the worst punishment he could have ever doled out. This one night, my mom and dad had been fighting, and my dad was staying in a hotel. He came by when it was Linda, Tabitha, and me at home. Dad lined us up and asked us all, "Where's your mother?" Now, I was not sure where she was, but I had overheard my uncle, her brother, say he wanted her to meet someone. I assumed it was a man and that Mom was out dating. This was my 7-year-old mind. As Dad stood there asking both sisters who knew where Mom was, just pretending they knew nothing, then Dad got to me. I could see the stares my sisters were giving me, but I did not care. I told my dad what I had heard and what I assumed. My sisters were so mad at me when Dad took off after Mom. Now, I had no idea where Mom was or what she was doing, but I was proud of helping my dad out. I think she was just at my uncle's house, but that was not the point. I was supposed to keep a secret, and I could not. My mom got back home later that night, and she said she was not upset that I had told Dad, which made me feel even better. Tabitha was not the best sister to share a room with. She was boy crazy and would sneak her boys into her room at night. We shared a bed, so I did not sleep in there most nights. These were the nights I would ask Linda to let me sleep with her. When Dad started working nights, I slept in his spot with Mom. One day, one of Tabitha's boyfriends had given her a necklace. I was about 9 at the time, and she was around 15. It was a nice little gold necklace, and I wanted to wear it. I'd asked her nicely, but like everything else, she refused to let me wear it. The next morning after she left for school, I went into her jewelry box and pulled out the necklace. I had a plan. I was going to wear it all day at school, then take it off and sneak it back before she got home that day. Everything was going great on the bus ride home. I remember the necklace, took it off, and placed it gently in my front shirt pocket. I had worn a button up shirt that day with the pocket to sneak the necklace back into the jewelry box. All was going well. I had even ridden the other bus home that day to get in a few minutes earlier to replace the necklace. I had a few minutes to spare that day when the bus driver let us off the bus. As soon as I got off the bus, my friends started doing cartwheels. Now, I was a sucker for dancing and tumbling, so I joined in the fun. I soon realized I had to get home when I reached into my pocket and the necklace was gone. Oh my goodness, I lost it in the grass when I was doing the cartwheels. I sat there forever looking for the necklace and never did find it. I guess someone else wanted it more than I did and took it. When I went home that day, I had confessed what I had done. She was so mad at me. She went back down there with me to look, but we never found it. I felt bad, but I told her if she had just said yes, I would have never lost it. I again went unpunished for this act of thievery. My parents were older when they had me. I guess this is why I did not get disciplined like my sisters. They were done and tired of children and teenagers by the time I got there. I did not get into much trouble, but when I did, it was a doozy. I was a straight A student in the band and loved school. And when I hit high school, I did not do anything extracurricular. It was my downfall. I had nothing to do to keep me busy, and I got bored. I found other things to do that involved older people. My mom and I spent lots of time together growing up. I was like an only child for a while. Mom and I had some adventures. The area I grew up in was an older neighborhood. Our home was built in the 1920s. A few blocks behind our home, we had a feed mill and a loading warehouse for railhead. We used to play back there all the time. It had caught fire in 1960 and nearly burned the whole area down. Our home was built a couple years after that. We had the health department and the old mental health building next to our home. At the end of the block, the government had put in low-income single-family homes. Most of my friends lived there. Some were being raised by their grandparents, some by single parents, and a few were whole families that needed rental assistance. I was very familiar with this area. I hung out there daily for years. By the time I had made it to high school, the homes were changing. We started having more crime. Drugs and illegal guns were starting to infiltrate low-income homes. I did not recognize anyone that lived there anymore. It was no longer familiar. We had a local shopping center by our home that had some of our favorite stores growing up. One in particular was this little store called Ben and Franklin Five and Dime. They had records and sold merchandise that you could find at other stores. They had a display of cast iron piggy banks. I would always make sure I had a penny to check them out because they were mechanical. Next door, we had a grocery store. When we just needed a couple of items, we would drive there. The store was kind of gross, I felt, and so we did not buy groceries there. Many times I rode my bike to these stores. At the convenience store across the street, I was a regular. I would go there for my parents' cigarette, milk, and bread. Many times I was handed a $20 bill and told to grab a gallon of milk, a loaf of bread, and a carton of long L&M Gold. Doc, the owner, knew us all and never questioned it when I, as a child, bought the cigarettes. It was the early 80s. Life seemed simpler. I believe life was simpler. One night, Mom and I needed to run to the grocery store around the corner. It seemed we needed to get a few items for the next day, so I jumped in the car and rode along. We got to the grocery store, purchased a few items, and headed back to the store. It was just a couple of bags, so Mom put them in the back seat. Now, a perfect storm was brewing unbeknownst to my mom and me. The neighborhood had gotten sketchy, and the grocery store, to me, was always gross, but we ventured out to grab a few items. There is one light and one stop sign on the way back home. We made it through the light intersection and got on the backside of the stores into the neighborhood. The lighting on the streets was always horrible through that one section. Very dark. This was why I did not ride my bike at night. It was not well lit in many areas. As we were rolling through the one dark section of the road, we heard a loud pop. My mother quickly yelled to get on the floorboard. I got down and we heard it again. Pop. Then again, pop. We could not see anyone, but I kept my head down and I stayed on the floorboard. She and I both thought it was gunshots. Mom hightailed it home. She drove like a bat out of hell in our driveway and jumped out of the car. My dad happened to be at home that evening and was in the kitchen by the back door. We came running in saying we heard gunshots. We heard them down the road. We were so scared and we wanted to call the police. Dad had told us to calm down. He had gotten the bags out of the car and they were sitting on the cabinet. Mom and I were both still excited and recounting the story to Dad when he looked down at the bag and asked us again what had happened. We told him we heard a pop. Then I got down on the floorboard. Then we heard 2 more pops. Dad looked again in the bag and started laughing. He pulled out the 4-pack of biscuits Mom had just bought. 3 of the Want biscuits had blown their lids. The yeast had popped the cans open. The cooler at the grocery store was not working correctly and the biscuits were brewing. The warm night air did not help the yeast and they blew their lids. To this day, I will not open those types of cans. I will throw them or have my husband open them, and he laughs when he does. Trauma from biscuits is real, folks. This was not our first adventure. Living with my mother was like living on the set of I Love Lucy. Dad had put up a wrought iron fence around our front yard. Part of the yard was parallel to the driveway. We had a long driveway. It went beside the house to the backyard where we had a huge lot and it sloped down towards the road. It seemed no matter how long we lived there, the biggest issue was backing out of the driveway. I do not know why, but it seemed to have a trick that Mom never seemed to tackle. Dad was very particular about his yard. He had leveled it and seeded it with new grass. He was a beautiful landscaper. We were not allowed in the front yard because we were rough on Dad's plants and trees. He had planted hedges along the sidewalk of the yard, and on the side of the driveway he had put this fence. It was nice, but only for a short time. You see, Mother had to leave the house one morning and had to back out of the driveway. Little did she know she did not have the knack of backing out of her driveway without incident. She accidentally hit the fence, and it attached to the side of her bumper unbeknownst to her. As she pulled out of the driveway, Mom realized, driving through the neighborhood, the fence was following her. Even though we lived in the same town for over a decade, Mom always got lost. It was always an adventure. Every time we went somewhere, it was never the same way. We once ended up in the middle of a funeral procession. Her favorite grocery store was Safeway. Back in the day, smoking was still allowed as you shopped. My mom was a smoker. She would push her basket with her purse on her shoulder and smoke her cigarette. She could reach into her purse, feel around, and pull out a cigarette and a lighter with one hand. This was her go-to move. However, when you've got other items in your purse with the same shape, things can get messed up. I remember turning around and seeing my mom with what she thought was a cigarette in her mouth. She had her lighter flicking it, reading something on the shelf. It was like a muscle memory to her. She could put the cigarette in her mouth and light it without even looking. Sometimes our muscle memory gets foggy. As I turned around, I noticed it was not a cigarette in Mom's mouth. She had no clue what she was trying to light. I began to laugh. My mom looked at me confused, and I told her she was not lighting a cigarette. She was lighting a tampon. Our trips to the store at night were what got Mom and me in the most peculiar situations. In Texas, we have cicadas. They're loud, and Mom was scared of them. Some years, they were everywhere, and this particular summer, they were abundant. Mom had a little red truck with a sliding window that Dad had bought her. When we would go places, she smoked, so she would slide her window open instead of rolling down the window. We jumped in the truck that evening, and Mom slid open the back window. We were driving along when a cicada flew through the window and landed somewhere in the truck. It was not known to us that he was in the truck and waiting. Mom reached down in her purse to grab a cigarette, but instead, she grabbed the cicada. This was not a good thing. She immediately stopped the truck and jumped out. I had no idea what was going on at first, so I jumped out as well. I realized it was a cicada. We began trying to figure out how to get the beast out of the truck when suddenly the cicada decided to leave and flew out. We jumped back in the truck and headed on our way. I could not wait to tell Dad. Even though my mom was unknowingly fun, she was hurt and needed Jesus. My mom had told my sister Linda that she was molested as a child. I knew my mom was broken, but I did not know what had happened to her at a young age. She had also lost her favorite brother when he died at 18 from a sickness that mom believed was cancer. She was 5 years younger than him, and her parents were trying to protect her feelings by keeping her visits with him short. This only made it painful for her. The pain of losing him stayed with her until she died. She could never find his grave or any information about him. He was like a ghost from her past that haunted her because she had no answers.